Welcome to Girlfriends Bible Study, a live Bible study with Connie and friends. Each week, Connie and her girlfriends engage in a lively conversation as they read and study Scripture. So, grab a pen, your journal, and your best friend, and enjoy this enlightening Bible study.
Hello, everybody. It is time for Bible Study Live, and I'm actually doing it on the, I was going to call it a coast, but it's really not a coast. I'm doing it in the South. I'm in Texas right now. So it's an hour earlier for me. I'm on Central Time, but it is 7:30 Eastern. So here we are. It is time for Bible Study Live. And I know my people, my girlfriends will be joining me at some point. So it'll throw the video off for a second, but I'll get it back. So in January, we are focused on water in the Bible. And last week we got to talk about Jesus and water, and he did all the things. He turned it into wine, he walked on it, he um, he stopped the rain and the wind and whatnot. And so he did a lot with water. And today we're talking about the parting of the water. Often we are taught about Moses and the Red Sea, and that's it. That's all we're taught. But there were multiple occurrences of the waters being parted in the Bible. And so there are some very specific ones that are similar to what happened with Moses. But then there are some other things that, if you do a study, they throw those in there too. So I'm going to do those honorable mentions as well, because they certainly are honorable. But let's start with the most famous one, the most taught parting of the waters. And that is, of course, the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus chapter 14. Exodus chapter 14. So here's Moses. We're going to pick up from, well, let's see. Let's pick up from verse 10. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" Honestly, they were the least appreciative people. You wonder why they ended up wandering around for 40 years and didn't make it in. Every few minutes, they were grumbling, complaining after being rescued from slavery. But was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? They're just anyway. Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord." Excuse me. You will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Such a powerful statement. That's verse 14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. It's powerful. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." Have my little light set up here. "I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. Oh, wow. There was an angel there. This is pretty cool.
So there's an angel who'd been traveling in front of Israel's army, and he goes behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side. So neither went near the other all night long. Pretty awesome. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That's powerful. We've seen it in the movie, of course. But that's just, special effects. This is in real life. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He made the wheels of their chariots come off so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, this verse 26, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak, the sea went back to its place. I have a hair on my face. The sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day, the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. That was Exodus 14, and we started at verse 10. And that's amazing. And you guys know we've studied this before. That faith in God and in Moses, it was short lived. It was short lived. Every few minutes, they were like, "We're tired of this manna. We're gonna build us a golden calf." They were doing the most, you guys. They were doing the most. So that was Exodus. Let's look at Joshua. Now, keep in mind, as you know, they were so disobedient and so unappreciative and all of that, that God was like, "You know what? It's not going to be y'all. It's going to be your descendants. You're just going to wander around the desert for 40 years. You're not going to make it in." So now we come to Joshua and the people who are there now, 40 years later, after the wandering is over. Go to Joshua chapter 3. And look at verse let's go to verse 5. Joshua told the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." Joshua said to the priests, "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people." So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river." Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan. Now we're in the Jordan, before it was Red Sea. As soon as they set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at a flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, or Zarethan. I'm not a sad. While the water flowing down to the sea of the Araba, the salt sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. So I knew about this because of reading a chapter a day, but up until then, I had only ever heard about the Red Sea being parted. I did not know he did it for Joshua as well. But that's not all. Look at chapter 4. We're still in the book of Joshua. We just finished reading 5 through 17 of chapter 3, and 17 is the last verse. And then it goes into chapter 4. And let's look and see what this says. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priest stood, and to carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stayed a night. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. Now the priests who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people, just as Moses had directed Joshua. The people hurried over, and as soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side while the people watched. The men of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh crossed over, armed, in front of the Israelites as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life, just as they had revered Moses. Then the Lord said to Joshua, command the priests carrying the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests, come up out of the Jordan. And the priests came up out of the river carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner had they set their feet on the dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. That took us through verse 18, chapter 4 of Joshua 1 through 18. So, I mean, water was just standing still, y'all. It was just standing still, miraculously. So that's the Red Sea, that's the Jordan River. And so Red Sea with Moses, Jordan River with Joshua. Now let's go to Second Kings. This is not it. Like, that's what honestly, I know about the Red Sea. I didn't know all these other things. So go to Second Kings chapter 2. And let's take a look. I'm actually going to read the entire, it's such a powerful chapter. It's a short chapter about Elijah and Elisha. So Elijah, as you know, was a powerful prophet, and his successor was Elisha. So here's what it says in 2 Kings chapter 2, starting at verse 1. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied, "but do not speak of it." We all been there, right? Okay, we know it's coming. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied, "but do not speak of it." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan." We're going back to the Jordan, y'all. And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men of the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, "My father, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them apart. He picked up the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the cloak that had fallen from him and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho who were watching said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. "Look," they said, "we, your servants, have 50 able men. Let them go and look for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has picked him up and set him down on some mountain or in some valley." "No," Elisha replied, "do not send them." But they persisted until he was too ashamed to refuse. So he said, "Send them." And they sent 50 men who searched for 3 days but did not find him. When they returned to Elisha, who was staying in Jericho, he said to them, Didn't I tell you not to go? The men of the city said to Elisha, "Look, our Lord, this town is well situated, as you can see, but the water is bad and the land is unproductive." "Bring me a new bowl," he said, "and put salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the spring and threw the salt into it, saying, "This is what the Lord says: I have healed this water. Never again will it cause death or make the land unproductive." And the water has remained wholesome to this day, according to the word Elisha had spoken. From there, Elisha went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some youths came out of the town and jeered at him. "Go on up, you bald head," they said. "Go on up, you bald head." He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the youths. And he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there returned to Samaria. I don't know why people decide to mess with God's elect. They just foolish, foolish. Seriously, that's how we're doing it. Anyway, as you just heard, Exodus, the Red Sea, Joshua, the Jordan River, and then the Jordan River again with Elijah and Elisha twice, one over, one back. And even with Joshua, the Jordan River just stayed dry until everything. They come back forth 40,000. They did stones. They did the ark. They did all the things. What some people also consider parting of the waters is one I agree with, and I'll read that one. But one is, and we read this last week, when Jesus commanded the storm, the winds and the rain to calm down. It says when he calmed the storm, they believe that was like parting the water. That's a stretch to me. I mean, it could. I mean, it's parting the water coming from up down, maybe. But in terms of parting a river or a sea and making it dry land, that's completely different. The other one is a little bit similar, but not quite. And that is Jeremiah 51, where he mentions that he's going to do something. The Lord does. If you look at Jeremiah 51, he talks about the Euphrates. And verse 36 says, "Therefore, this is what the Lord says: See, I will defend your cause and avenge you. I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry. Babylon will be like a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, an object of horror and scorn, a place where no one lives. Her people all roar like young lions. They growl like lion cubs. But while they are aroused, I will set out a feast for them and make them drunk, so that they shout with laughter, then sleep forever and not awake, declares the Lord. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams and goats. How Shishak will be captured, the boast of the whole earth seized. What a horror Babylon will be among the nations." And again in verse 42, "The sea will rise over Babylon, its roaring waves will cover her." And apparently, that's exactly what happened in 539 BC under the leadership of King Cyrus the Great. So, same kind of thing. The water dried up, and I'm not sure. I don't know where that account is. But somebody who's researched this said that's exactly what happened. So, last but not least, you guys, the one that I do have to acknowledge is a parting of the water. We have to acknowledge where it began. So we go back to Genesis 1, when he first created it. So go to Genesis 1, and we're going to read verses 6 through 10. It says, "And God said, let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day." And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. So that really is the parting of the waters, making it, parting this way so that there's sky, and then parting on the earth so that there's dry ground and there's seas. So that's where it began, the parting of the waters. It's never been hard for him. He's been doing it since the world began. So that was Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 through 10. And that's the parting of the water. So I do want to know, were you aware of all of the parting? Did you know that the Jordan was parted by Joshua as well as by Elijah and Elisha? Did you know about that, or did you only know about the Red Sea? Anyway, that is tonight's Bible study. I've been having Zoom issues. I don't know if my sisters tried to get in. Last time they struggled to get in, so I missed them tonight, my sweet sisters, and they just might be busy. But it's very rare that I do a whole Bible study without one of my sisters on the call. So I hope everybody's fine. And I could have gotten it wrong. I don't know what time it is. I think that I'm doing it at the right time. I think I am. I'm pretty sure that it was 7:30. That I started it at 7:30 Eastern. I hope so. Anyway, if I'm wrong, if it's really 6:30, then I missed everybody. So I actually don't even know what time it is, y'all. And I'm using my phones as lights. It says 6:57. So I know that my time on my phone is already central. So anyway, it was good to see you at Bible Study Live, and I will see you again next week. We'll continue our study of water. Have a great night. Bye, everybody.